So there's two different ways of approaching climate change issues. These two different ways are isolationism and integrationism. Isolationism treats the ethical issue of climate change and isolation or by itself from other ethical issues such as poverty, abortion, immigration, etc. There's a couple pros to using isolationism. The first is the ability to focus solely on climate change, and this helps simplify the issue of climate change by keeping other ethical issues from complicating it. There are a couple cons to using isolationism. One con would be you can't consider other aspects that climate change policies could affect. And another con of isolationism pertaining to climate change would be it's hard to treat climate change as a discrete and singular issue since it affects many other aspects. Integrationism, which is the opposite of isolationism, treats the ethical issue of climate change in conjunction or together with other ethical issues. A couple pros of integrationism include climate change impacts many aspects of society, such as economy, health, etc., which integrationism can consider. Integrationism can also draw on more general values of the world, such as people's right to a decent standard of living. One big con of integrationism is this can lead to deadlocks. Since there are more ethical issues involved, this can complicate the problem and make creating a solution a lot harder than it would be for isolationism. Here are a couple examples of isolationism and integrationism to help clarify what each kind of are. So an example of isolationism would be proposing principles for allocating rights to emitting greenhouse gases. This approach would treat greenhouse gases in isolation from other ethical issues. An example of integrationism would be putting regulations on livestock farming. Livestock farming is one of the top 5 contributors to climate change since it causes an increase in greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases in turn lead to climate change. This is an example of integrationism since the issue of climate change is being combined with another issue such as livestock farming. So whose responsibility is it to address global warming? Well, to figure out whose responsibility it is, let's first talk about who's responsible for global warming. So, about 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from only 100 different fossil fuel companies, which is kind of eye opening. And about 33% of these emissions come from the top 20 fossil fuel companies. Another fun fact is the average American household only produces 8.1 tons of CO2 compared to 33 billion tons globally. So this is one of the common misconceptions is, every American or singular person can impact global warming. And that's just kind of not true. It's since every American or person only contributes such a small amount of greenhouse gases, it's really not up to them. Some of the world's richest countries, such as the United States, Canada, South Korea, Russia, China, for example, release the vast majority of emissions. Shown down here on the left is a chart of the global disparity in carbon footprints. This chart is based per capita of CO2 emissions, and this was done in 2016. Leading the chart, you see the United States at 14.95 tons of CO2 emissions, followed closely by Canada at 14.91 tons, then South Korea, Russia, Japan, and onso. Another fact is the richest 10% of people consume 20 times more energy than the poorest 10%, which is kind of surprising. Well, not really surprising, it's just interesting to think about. Over here on the right side, we have a global greenhouse gas emissions by sector. So as you can see there, 73% of greenhouse gases come from energy usage, consumption, etc. So you see there energy use in industry, transportation, energy uses in buildings. The second biggest chunk is for agriculture, forestry, and land use at 18%. This is for livestock, deforestation, crop burning, and then industry and waste contribute for 5 and 3% respectively. So, whose responsibility? You need to figure out who's responsible, and it's it's the fossil fuel companies, it's the energy usage, it's the richest countries, and um, everybody involved with that.